He thought I would cry when he said he regretted marrying me. Instead, I gave him papers that made him lose everything. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. I still remember the smell of his cologne that first day. Tom Ford Noir. Extreme, bold, expensive, confident, just like him. We met at the university library during my final year of law school. I was buried under corporate law textbooks when he appeared at my table, all charm and designer clothes, asking if he could sit down because everywhere else was full. "Law student?" he asked, nodding at my books. "Corporate law?" I said, not looking up from my notes about merger acquisitions. Smart and beautiful. Dangerous combination. He smiled that smile that would ruin my next 15 years. His name was Marcus. 28, MBA from Wharton, already working at his father's construction company. He talked about expansion plans, about taking the family business national, about building an empire. I was 23, top of my class, and stupidly impressed by his ambition. Our first date was at Le Bernardin, $150 per person, which felt impossibly luxurious to someone living on ramen and student loans. He ordered wine I couldn't pronounce and paid without blinking. When he walked me to my studio apartment in Hell's Kitchen, he didn't even blink at the peeling paint and the broken buzzer. "This is temporary," he said, kissing my forehead. "I'm going to take care of you." I should have asked why he thought I needed taking care of. We married 18 months later. The wedding cost $60,000, his parents' gift, he said. My parents, a school teacher and a mechanic from Ohio, looked overwhelmed in their rented formal wear. I wore my grandmother's pearls and felt like Cinderella. The first year was golden. We moved into his condo in Upper West Side, marble countertops, floor-to-ceiling windows, rent that cost more than my father made in 3 months. I passed the bar exam and started at a mid-tier firm doing corporate contracts. Marcus would bring me coffee in bed on Saturday mornings and plan weekend trips to the Hamptons or Vermont. But success has a way of changing people. Or maybe it just reveals who they really were all along. The construction company grew. Marcus landed a contract to build luxury condos in Brooklyn, then another in Queens. The checks got bigger, the dinners got more expensive, and slowly, gradually, I became an accessory to his success rather than a partner in our life. It started with small things. He'd make decisions about our social calendar without asking me. "We're having dinner with the Peterson clients Friday," he'd announce, not ask. When I mentioned I had a work event that night, he'd look annoyed. "Can't you reschedule? This is important." My work was never important. When I stayed late to finish a merger that would save my client millions, Marcus would complain I wasn't home to make dinner. When I got promoted to senior associate with a $40,000 raise, his congratulations lasted exactly 30 seconds before he started talking about his latest project. "You know, Sarah, you don't really need to work so hard," he said one evening over takeout from our usual Thai place, $38 for pad Thai and spring rolls. "The company's doing great. You could cut back, maybe go part-time. Focus on us." Focus on us. What he meant was focus on him. But I was making $90,000 a year by then, and I'd worked too hard to give it up. So I smiled and changed the subject, the way I was learning to do more and more often. The real shift came in year 3. Marcus hired Jennifer, a marketing consultant with legs that went on for days, and a laugh like silver bells. She was young, blonde, and impressed by everything he said. She'd show up to strategy meetings at our apartment wearing designer dresses and perfume that cost more than my monthly subway pass. "Jenny's brilliant," Marcus would say after she left. "Really gets the vision. Jenny this, Jenny that." Jenny suggested they rebrand the company. Jenny thought they should expand to Miami. Jenny, fucking Jenny. I found the hotel receipt in his coat pocket 3 months later. The Ritz-Carlton downtown. One night, $450. The same night he told me he had to work late on the Henderson proposal. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He just looked tired. "It's not what you think," he said, which is exactly what guilty men always say. "Then what is it?" "It's complicated. You've been so focused on your career lately. We barely talk. Jenny understands the business, understands what I'm trying to build." The audacity was breathtaking. I'd been working 60-hour weeks to help pay for our life, our $1,000 a month parking spot, our $300 dinners, our vacations to places I couldn't afford on my own. And somehow I was the one not paying attention. But I forgave him. God help me, I forgave him. "It won't happen again," he promised, and I believed him because I wanted to, because I loved the life we'd built, even if it was crumbling beneath me. He lasted 6 weeks before the next affair. This time, it was Melissa, an interior designer working on the company's new offices. After Melissa came Rebecca, a lawyer from his father's firm. Then Amanda, a real estate agent helping him scout locations. I developed a sixth sense for it. The way he'd shower and change clothes after work. The way he'd guard his phone, taking it to the bathroom, sleeping with it face down on the nightstand. The way he'd pick fights over nothing, the dishwasher not being loaded right, the air conditioning being too cold, as if my failings justified his betrayals. But I was learning things too. Corporate law teaches you to read between the lines, to spot the loopholes, to understand how power really works. And I was getting very good at my job. I made partner at 31. The celebration dinner was at Daniel tasting menu, wine pairings, the works. $500 for 2 people. Marcus barely looked up from his phone. "That's nice, honey," he said when I told him about the promotion. "Oh, did I mention we're buying the place in Connecticut? I put in an offer today." The place in Connecticut, a 4-bedroom colonial he'd seen online, $750,000, with a mortgage that would require both our incomes to manage. He'd decided our future without consulting me, the same way he decided everything else. That night, lying in our king-size bed with its $1,500 Italian sheets, I stared at the ceiling and realized I was married to a stranger. Worse, I was married to a man who saw me as a supporting character in his own life story. But I was about to learn that even supporting characters have secrets. The private investigator cost me $2,000. Her name was Patricia Williams, a former NYPD detective who specialized in matrimonial cases. She was thorough, professional, and ruthlessly efficient. Within 3 weeks, she had photographs, hotel receipts, and a pattern of behavior that would make any family court judge wince. Marcus wasn't just cheating, he was stupid about it. Same credit card for hotels, same restaurants, same routine. Patricia's report was 47 pages of evidence that would hold up in any courtroom, but that was just the beginning. You see, being a corporate lawyer married to a construction company owner has certain advantages. I knew his business structure, his contracts, his financing arrangements. I'd helped set up some of them in the early days, back when he still pretended my opinion mattered. What Marcus didn't know was that I'd been watching, learning, preparing. Every financial document that came to the house, I copied. Every business dinner conversation, I memorized. Every casual mention of deals and partnerships, I investigated. The construction business is complicated. Lots of moving parts, lots of regulations, lots of ways to cut corners if you're not careful. And Marcus, despite his Wharton MBA, had always been more about the big picture than the details. I started noticing discrepancies 3 years earlier. Small things at first permits that didn't match city records, subcontractor payments that seemed inflated, material costs that didn't add up. I told myself it was just messy bookkeeping. But as I dug deeper, a pattern emerged. Marcus wasn't just cutting corners, he was systematically defrauding his clients and the city. Overbilling for materials, using substandard supplies, bribing inspectors to overlook code violations. The Henderson project alone had enough violations to shut down the company permanently. I compiled everything into a comprehensive file: bank records, email correspondence, photographs of substandard work, testimony from disgruntled workers. By the time I was finished, I had enough evidence to send Marcus to federal prison for fraud, racketeering, and tax evasion. But I wasn't ready to use it yet. I was waiting for the right moment, the perfect opportunity to make him understand exactly what he'd lost. That moment came on a Tuesday evening in October, 6 months after I'd discovered his latest affair with someone named Brittany, a 24-year-old Instagram influencer who specialized in lifestyle content. We were having dinner at home Chinese takeout from Golden Dragon, $32 for lo mein and General Tso's chicken. Marcus was scrolling through his phone, barely acknowledging my presence. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "I've been thinking," he said finally, not looking up from his screen. "About what?" "About us. About this marriage." He set down his phone and looked at me with the kind of expression you'd give a business partner you were about to fire. "I don't think this is working anymore." My chopsticks paused halfway to my mouth. "What do you mean?" "Come on, Sarah. We both know this has been over for years. We're like roommates now. You're always working, I'm always working. We never talk anymore." The irony was staggering. The man who'd spent 5 years systematically ignoring me was complaining that we didn't talk enough. "So, what are you suggesting?" He ran a hand through his hair, still thick, still perfect, like everything else about his appearance. "Maybe we should consider separating, taking some time apart." "You mean divorce?" "I mean, figuring out what we both want. You could keep the apartment while we sort things out. I'd make sure you're taken care of financially." "Taken care of? Like I was a pet who needed feeding. And you'd what? Move in with Brittany?" His face flushed. "How did you—" He caught himself, tried to recover. "This isn't about anyone else. This is about us not being happy." I set down my chopsticks and really looked at him. This man I'd loved, admired, built a life with. This stranger who thought I was too stupid to notice his affairs, too weak to survive without him, too naive to see through his transparent lies. "You want to know the truth, Marcus?" I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "I stopped being happy in this marriage 3 years ago, maybe 4. But I stayed because I made a commitment. I stayed because I believed marriage meant something. I stayed because I thought you might remember who you used to be before the money and the success and the ego made you forget that I'm not your employee." He looked uncomfortable now, shifting in his chair. "Sarah, you're being dramatic." "Am I? When's the last time you asked me about my work? When's the last time you planned something for us instead of just announcing your decisions? When's the last time you looked at me, really looked at me, instead of checking your phone?" The questions hung in the air between us. He didn't answer because he couldn't. "You know what I think, Marcus. I think you've been planning this conversation for months. I think you've been looking for an excuse to leave, and now you've convinced yourself that the problem is me, that I'm the one who checked out, that I'm the one who stopped trying." His jaw tightened. "Maybe I have been planning this. Maybe I've been thinking about it for a while. You want honesty? Fine. This marriage was a mistake. We want different things. We always have." And there it was, not heat-of-the-moment anger, not the pain of discovery, but cold, calculated dismissal. He'd been planning to discard me like a worn-out suit, but he wasn't finished. "I should have ended this years ago," he continued, his voice growing harder. "I was young, you were pretty, and I thought that was enough. But you're not the woman I thought I was marrying. You're too focused on your career, too independent, too—" He searched for the word. "Too much. Too much." As if ambition and intelligence were character flaws. "So that's it?" I asked. 15 years and I'm just too much?" He stood up, started clearing the takeout containers with sharp, angry movements. "Look, I tried to be nice about this. I thought we could have a civilized conversation, work out the details like adults. But if you're going to be bitter and difficult—" "Difficult?" I laughed, and the sound surprised both of us. "Marcus, do you have any idea how much I've accommodated you over the years? How many of my dreams I put aside? How many times I bit my tongue? How many nights I went to bed alone while you were out working late? That's business. That's bullshit, and we both know it." I stood up too, faced him across our granite kitchen island. "You want a divorce? Fine, you'll have one. But don't you dare stand there and tell me this is my fault. Don't you dare rewrite history to make yourself the victim." His mask slipped then, just for a moment. I saw something ugly underneath contempt, maybe, or just bone-deep indifference. You know what, Sarah? Maybe it is your fault. Maybe if you'd been a better wife, a more supportive partner, things would have been different. Maybe if you'd put our marriage first instead of chasing some fantasy about being a big-shot lawyer. Stop. Maybe if you'd given me children instead of making excuses about timing and careers. Stop. Maybe if you'd been the woman I needed instead of the woman you wanted to be. I said stop. My voice cut through his rant like a blade. He actually took a step back. We stared at each other across the kitchen, 15 years of accumulated resentment crackling between us. The refrigerator hummed. A car horn blared outside. Time seemed suspended. Then Marcus straightened his shoulders, smoothed his expression back into something resembling civility. When he spoke again, his voice was controlled, almost gentle. Look, I didn't mean to get harsh. This is hard for both of us, but we need to be realistic about what's happening here. He moved around the island, came closer, his voice taking on that patronizing tone I'd learned to hate. I know this is scary for you. I know you're worried about being alone, about managing financially, but I'm not going to leave you hanging. We'll work out a fair settlement. You'll be fine. Fine. Like I was a problem to be solved. I regret marrying you. The words hit like a physical blow. He said them quietly, almost conversationally, but they landed with devastating precision. I regret wasting 15 years on someone who was never going to be what I needed. I regret not having the courage to admit it sooner. I regret... He gestured vaguely between us. All of this. He thought I would cry. I could see it in his face, the way he braced for tears, for pleading, for the breakdown of a desperate woman clinging to a marriage that was over. Instead, I walked to the den. The papers were in the safe behind his diploma-thick manila folders, perfectly organized, tabs labeled with his name and various case numbers. I'd been keeping them there for 8 months, waiting for exactly this moment. When I returned to the kitchen, Marcus was loading the dishwasher, already mentally moved on to whatever came next. He looked up when I set the folders on the counter. "What's that?" "Divorce papers," I said, "signed and ready to file." His eyebrows rose. "You already had these drawn up?" "3 months ago, along with these." I opened the first folder. Petition for dissolution of marriage, citing irreconcilable differences and adultery. Photographic evidence of 6 separate affairs over the past 4 years. Hotel receipts, credit card statements, testimony from 3 different private investigators. His face went pale. "Sarah, what the hell? And this?" I opened the second folder. Complete financial disclosure of all marital assets. The condo, the Connecticut house you bought without consulting me, the business accounts, the investment portfolio, the retirement funds, 50-50 split as required by New York state law. Now wait a minute. And this. Third folder. Documentation of systematic fraud in Ellis Construction, contracts dating back 5 years, overbilling clients, using substandard materials, bribing city inspectors, falsifying safety reports, 17 separate instances with documentary evidence. The dishwasher stopped humming. The silence was absolute. Marcus stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. How did you... "I'm a corporate lawyer, Marcus. This is what I do." I opened the fourth folder. Tax evasion, hiding income in offshore accounts, claiming false deductions, paying employees under the table. The IRS is going to love this. You can't. You can't use privileged information. Nothing here is privileged. It's all public record, financial documents from our joint accounts, or information you voluntarily shared with me as your wife. Any first-year law student could have found most of this. "Sarah, listen to me." His voice was different now, urgent, almost pleading. "We can work this out. We don't need to go nuclear here. We can be civilized about this." Civilized. Now he wanted to be civilized. "Oh, but I am being civilized. See, here's what's going to happen." I pulled out a chair and sat down, as if we were having a business meeting. You're going to sign these divorce papers without contest. You're going to agree to the 50-50 asset split, and you're going to liquidate the business within 6 months to pay for the settlement. I can't liquidate the business. It's my father's company. It's a criminal enterprise that's been defrauding clients for years. The only question is whether you want to shut it down voluntarily or wait for the federal prosecutor to do it for you. He sat down hard in the opposite chair. You're bluffing. I slid another document across the table. Copy of a letter I sent to the U.S. Attorney's Office. They're very interested in white-collar crime these days, especially construction fraud. Apparently it's a priority for the new administration. His hands shook as he picked up the letter. This is dated 6 months ago. I've been very patient, Marcus, giving you time to do the right thing on your own, but patience has its limits. Sarah, please. Think about what you're doing. If you destroy the company, you destroy your own settlement. We both lose everything. No, you lose everything. I keep my partnership, my salary, my pension, my reputation. I keep the life I built with my own hands while you were busy screwing your way through half of Manhattan. This is insane. He stopped, stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. Who are you? The question almost made me laugh. I'm exactly who I've always been, Marcus. You just never bothered to pay attention. You thought I was some sweet little trophy wife who'd be grateful for whatever crumbs you threw her way. You thought I was too stupid to notice your affairs, too weak to do anything about them, too dependent on you to ever fight back. I leaned forward, looked him straight in the eyes. You were wrong about everything. He tried one more time, switching tactics. Look, maybe we both said things we didn't mean. Maybe we can still work this out. Go to counseling, take a vacation, start over. Marcus. My voice was gentle now, almost kind. You said you regretted marrying me. You said our entire marriage was a mistake. You can't take that back. I was angry. I didn't mean, yes, you did. And you know what? You're right. This marriage was a mistake, but not for the reasons you think. I stood up, gathered the papers. You have 48 hours to review these documents with your attorney. If you don't sign them by Friday, I file the criminal complaints on Monday. The FBI has a field office 6 blocks from here. I'm sure they'd love to take a look at your business practices. He sat there in stunned silence as I walked toward the door. Where are you going? Hotel. I already packed. It was true. 2 suitcases and a garment bag were waiting in the hallway. Everything I needed for the next few weeks. Sarah, wait, please. We need to talk about this. I paused at the doorway, looked back at this man who'd shared my bed for 15 years, who'd promised to love and honor me, who'd just told me our entire life together was a regret. Actually, Marcus, we really don't. The hotel was a boutique place in Tribeca, small and expensive and perfectly anonymous. I checked in under my maiden name, Sarah Catherine Mitchell, and ordered room service, salmon, roasted vegetables, and a bottle of Sancerre that cost more than our usual takeout dinner. I ate slowly, looking out at the city lights, thinking about the girl who'd met Marcus in that library 15 years ago. She'd been so impressed by his confidence, so grateful for his attention, so ready to build a life around someone else's dreams. She would have cried tonight. She would have begged him to stay, promised to change, agreed to be whatever he needed her to be. But that girl was gone. In her place was a woman who'd learned to read contracts in 3 languages, who could spot fraud from across a conference room, who'd built a career on her own terms despite every attempt to make her smaller. My phone buzzed around midnight. Marcus. Sarah, I've been thinking, maybe we rushed into this conversation. Maybe we should slow down, think things through. Did you read the papers? A pause. I called my attorney. He says this is serious. It is serious. The fraud charges. Sarah, that could mean prison time. Yes, it could. My father, the company. This would destroy everything he built. I thought about his father, Robert Ellis, a decent man who'd built a successful business through honest work and careful planning. He didn't deserve what his son had done to his legacy. Then you shouldn't have committed fraud. Sarah, please. I know I hurt you. I know I made mistakes. But this... This is bigger than just us. There are employees, subcontractors, people who depend on this company. You should have thought about that before you decided to cut corners and line your own pockets. I can change. I can fix this. Give me a chance to fix this. The desperation in his voice was something I'd never heard before. For 15 years, I'd been the one begging for attention, for consideration, for basic respect. Now he was pleading with me. It felt strange, not satisfying the way I'd imagined, just strange. Marcus, I said finally, do you remember what you said to me 3 hours ago? I was angry. You said you regretted marrying me. You said I was never going to be what you needed. You said you should have ended this years ago. My voice was steady, matter of fact. Did you mean those things? Silence. Because I need to know. If there's any part of you that still believes in this marriage, that still thinks we can fix what's broken, then we can talk. But if you meant what you said, if you really see our entire life together as a mistake, then there's nothing left to discuss. The silence stretched longer. Outside, I could hear the distant sound of traffic, the city that never sleeps going about its restless business. Finally, he spoke. I don't know how to answer that. Then you just did. I hung up the phone and turned it off. The settlement conference was held 3 weeks later in a sterile conference room on the 37th floor of Marcus's attorney's building. Mahogany table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows with views of Central Park, the kind of room where million-dollar deals were made and destroyed. Marcus looked terrible. He'd lost weight, his suits hung loose, and there were dark circles under his eyes. His attorney, Richard Blackwell, was one of the most expensive divorce lawyers in the city, $800 an hour, to tell his clients what they didn't want to hear. My attorney was Helen Chang, a former federal prosecutor who specialized in high-net-worth divorces. She was smaller than Marcus's lawyer, but twice as sharp, and she had a reputation for leaving opposing counsel looking like they'd been hit by a freight train. My client is prepared to offer Mrs. Ellis a generous settlement, Blackwell began. 30% of marital assets, spousal support for 5 years, and her choice of either the Manhattan condo or the Connecticut property. Helen didn't even look up from her notes. That's insulting. We'll take the 50% mandated by New York state law, plus liquidation of the business to satisfy the settlement. The business is the primary marital asset. Liquidating it would leave both parties with nothing. Then perhaps Mr. Ellis should have considered that before committing multiple felonies. Marcus leaned forward. Sarah, can we talk? Just the two of us? I looked at him across the polished table. This man I'd loved, hated, feared, and finally outmaneuvered. He looked smaller somehow, diminished in a way that had nothing to do with the weight loss. What would you like to talk about, Marcus? This doesn't have to be a war. We can still be civilized about this. I am being civilized. I could have filed criminal charges first and let the FBI sort out the asset forfeiture. Instead, I'm giving you a chance to clean up your own mess. Blackwell cleared his throat. Mrs. Ellis, my client is willing to consider a more equitable split of assets. 45% to you, 55% to him, given that the business was his primary contribution to the marriage. The business that's built on fraud? Alleged fraud. Helen cut him off. There's nothing alleged about it. We have bank records, email correspondence, testimony from 3 separate sources, and photographic evidence of code violations. Your client systematically defrauded contractors, clients, and the city for 5 years. The only reason he's not already in federal custody is because my client has been remarkably patient. Sarah, Marcus said, ignoring the lawyers, I know you're angry. I know I hurt you. But what you're doing, it's not you. You're not vindictive. You're not cruel. I studied his face, looking for any sign of the man I'd fallen in love with in that library. But all I saw was desperation and calculation, the look of someone trying to figure out the right combination of words to get what he wanted. You're right, I said finally. I'm not vindictive or cruel. If I were, I would have gone to the FBI 6 months ago and let them freeze all our assets while they built their case. Instead, I'm offering you a way out that lets you keep your freedom and your father's reputation intact. By destroying the company? The company was already destroyed, Marcus. You destroyed it the day you decided to cut corners and steal from your clients. I'm just making sure you don't take anyone else down with you. He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact instant when he realized I wasn't bluffing, that there was no combination of words, no amount of charm or manipulation that would change my mind. "Fine," he said quietly. "What do you want?" Helen slid a document across the table. Dissolution agreement. 50-50 split of all marital assets, including the business. Mr. Ellis liquidates Ellis Construction within 6 months and pays Mrs. Ellis her portion. In exchange, Mrs. Ellis agrees not to pursue criminal charges related to the business practices she's documented. And if I refuse? Then we file criminal complaints Monday morning, and you can negotiate your settlement with federal prosecutors. Blackwell was reading the agreement, his face growing more grim with each page. This is quite comprehensive. Mrs. Ellis is a very thorough attorney. Marcus signed the papers 20 minutes later. His signature was shaky, nothing like the bold scrawl I remembered from our marriage certificate. As we prepared to leave, he caught my arm in the hallway. "Sarah, wait, I need to understand something. How long? How long have you been planning this?" I thought about the question. When had it started? When I found the first hotel receipt? When he missed my promotion dinner to take Brittany to Cabo? When he told me I was too much? Or maybe it started earlier. Maybe it started the first time he made a decision about our life without consulting me. Maybe it started the day he stopped seeing me as a partner and started seeing me as an employee. I've been protecting myself for years, Marcus. You just never noticed. Protecting yourself from what? From me? The question was so genuinely bewildered that I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "From exactly this," I said. "From the day you decided I wasn't worth keeping around anymore. From the day you'd rather be married to someone else. From the day you'd throw away 15 years like they meant nothing." He was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was very small. "I never meant for it to end like this." "No," I agreed. "You meant for it to end with me crying and grateful for whatever scraps you threw my way. You meant for it to end with you riding off into the sunset with your 24-year-old girlfriend while I picked up the pieces of my life alone. That's exactly what you meant. The only thing you didn't count on was that I might have plans of my own." I walked away then, left him standing in that expensive hallway with his expensive lawyer and his suddenly very expensive problems. The dissolution of Ellis Construction made the business pages of the Times. "Family construction firm closes amid financial difficulties," read the headline. The article mentioned irregularities in business practices and ongoing federal investigation, but Marcus's name stayed out of the criminal courts. He kept his part of the bargain. The assets were liquidated, the employees found new jobs, and I received a check for $3 million, my half of 15 years of marriage. I used part of it to buy a townhouse in Brooklyn Heights, something that was mine alone. The rest I invested conservatively, enough to ensure I'd never again have to depend on anyone else's financial decisions for my security. Marcus moved to Florida 6 months later. I heard through mutual friends that he was working for a property management company, making a fraction of what he used to earn. Brittany had moved on to someone with better prospects. I threw myself into my work with renewed energy. Without the constant stress of managing Marcus's ego and expectations, I found I had bandwidth I'd forgotten I possessed. I took on bigger cases, more challenging clients, more interesting problems. Last month, I made senior partner. The announcement dinner was at Le Bernardin Full Circle from that first date 15 years ago. But this time, I paid for it myself, with money I'd earned with my own hands and my own mind. I ordered the most expensive wine on the menu and toasted myself alone at a table for one, perfectly content with my own company. People ask me sometimes if I miss being married, if I'm lonely, if I regret how things ended, if I think I was too harsh. The answer is complicated. I miss being in love. I miss having a partner. I miss the idea of building a life with someone who sees you as an equal. But I don't miss Marcus, and I don't miss the woman I became in that marriage, smaller, quieter, always apologizing for taking up space. Do I regret it? The divorce? The investigation? The systematic dismantling of the life we'd built together? Not for a second. Marcus thought I would cry when he said he regretted marrying me. He thought I'd beg him to reconsider, promise to change, agree to be whatever he needed me to be. He thought wrong about a lot of things. But mostly, he thought wrong about who had the power in our relationship. He assumed that because he made more money, because he owned the business, because he could walk away and start over with someone younger and more accommodating, that he held all the cards. What he never realized was that knowledge is power, that patience is power, that being underestimated is the greatest advantage you can have in any negotiation. I am no longer Marcus Ellis's wife. I am no longer anyone's wife. I am Sarah Mitchell, senior partner, owner of my own life, beholder of my own destiny, and I sleep very well at night.